The glass towers of Sao Paulo shimmered under a humid twilight, each surface lit with thousands of digital ads that blinked like watchful eyes. Isabella stood in the middle of the terminal, clutching her carry-on, trying to ignore the tightness in her chest as announcements echoed overhead in Portuguese and English. Around her, travelers scrolled through glowing wristbands, their social feeds projected briefly into the air like translucent banners, flaunting status, followers, and wealth as casually as boarding passes. Her own band glowed dim blue, standard tier, nothing flashy, nothing the Van Orens would brag about. Daniel had always mocked it. "You could upgrade, you know," he'd tell her with that smirk, "if you actually tried, or," his favourite jab, "if you married better." And she had laughed once, years ago, thinking he was joking. But Daniel rarely joked unless the punchline was at her expense. She swallowed and adjusted her blouse. The reunion was supposed to be a simple trip. Family gatherings always demanded her presence, though no one ever wanted her there. She was furniture to them, polished enough to look at, mute enough not to threaten. Except Daniel had vanished. He'd said he needed to step away for a call, leaving her to wait at the cafe near the gates. She remembered the smell of strong coffee and cinnamon pastries, remembered checking the departure screen. When she looked up again, the gate had closed. The flight to New York was gone. Her husband was on it. No message, no call, no apology. Just a hollow feed notification. Daniel Van Oren checked in aboard Flight 742. At first she thought it had to be some kind of mistake, but the pit in her stomach twisted tighter as she pieced it together. The jokes, the little digs, the way his cousins teased her at last year's gala. Fragile Isabella, dependent Isabella, couldn't navigate a block without Daniel. He'd left her, on purpose. Her band pinged. A call request. She answered before thinking. Daniel's face appeared, handsome and smug, his background blurred to hide the comfort of his first-class seat. "Darling," he drawled, "don't look so upset. You should have seen your face when the gate closed." He chuckled, sipping champagne. "You'll figure it out." Maybe call the concierge desk, or who knows, maybe you'll charm someone into helping you. Think of it as a little adventure. "Daniel," she said, her voice tight, "you left me here. Relax, it's a prank. Everyone will love it when I tell them. You'll show up later, all flustered and adorable, and they'll laugh. Family legend material." She gripped the phone tighter, pulse thudding in her ears. "You think humiliating me is funny?" he shrugged. "It's harmless. Besides, it shows them you're still, well, dependent. Nothing wrong with that. It makes me look strong. Trust me, it'll kill at dinner." The call cut off before she could answer. For a moment, Isabella just stood there, staring at her dim reflection in the glass wall of the terminal. Her reflection looked smaller than she remembered, tired, overshadowed, exactly how the family always wanted her. Then she exhaled slowly. No tears, not this time. She walked out of the terminal, the humid evening hitting her skin like warm breath. Traffic roared on the skyway above, neon signs pulsing in colours too bright to be natural. She had no plan, no luggage beyond her carry-on, but she had herself, and that would be enough. A memory tugged at her then, a smile, a voice, a moment years ago in this same city. Carlos. He'd been just another ambitious entrepreneur back then, desperate to pitch an idea no one else would listen to. His accent had been smooth, his manner respectful, his eyes dark with determination. She had met him by chance at a charity event Daniel had dragged her to. Daniel had brushed him off, but Isabella had listened. She'd asked questions, she'd encouraged him. That was before his company took off, before the Van Orens even knew his name. Isabella tapped her band, hesitated, then typed his name into the directory. His profile shimmered into view. Carlos Mendez, verified, millions of followers, current location, Sao Paulo. Her heart skipped. She hesitated only a second longer before sending a message. "Carlos, it's Isabella. I know this is unexpected. I'm in Sao Paulo and, well, I could use a friend. She hit send before she lost her nerve. The reply came faster than she expected. Isabella, after all these years. Of course, where are you? Minutes later, a sleek black transport pulled up outside the terminal, its doors lifting with a whisper. She climbed in, the air-conditioned interior smelling faintly of leather and citrus. Carlos sat inside, older now, but even more striking. His hair had silver at the temples, his suit cut sharp, but his eyes, those same dark eyes, lit with recognition. "Isabella," he said warmly, leaning forward. "It's been too long." She let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "Carlos." His gaze flicked over her, assessing but not in the shallow way Daniel's family always did. "You look stronger." Her lips curved faintly. "You mean older?" "I mean stronger," he corrected with a smile. The city blurred past as the transport hummed onto the elevated lanes. Silence stretched, comfortable yet charged, until Carlos finally asked, "What brings you here alone?" "Surely not a holiday?" She hesitated, then told him. Not everything, the humiliation was too fresh, but enough. Daniel's prank, the abandoned flight, the expectation that she'd come crawling back. Carlos's jaw tightened as he listened. "He left you here." As a joke, she nodded. He shook his head slowly. "And he thinks this makes him look strong." A humorless chuckle escaped him. Fascinating logic. She studied his profile as he spoke, the way his hand rested on his knee, the way his voice carried weight without trying. So different from Daniel's empty bravado. "I don't want to crawl back," she said quietly. "Not this time." Carlos's eyes softened. "Good. Then don't." The transport slowed, descending toward a district of glass towers and lush rooftop gardens. He led her into a private lounge, its walls lined with living greenery, the hum of drones faint above. He ordered wine without asking, as if he remembered her tastes from years ago. They talked, at first about small things, the city, the weather, the changes since they last met, then deeper. He spoke of his projects, sustainable arcologies rising from the Amazon basin, tech that balanced profit with preservation. She listened, asked questions, offered insights. His eyes lit when she spoke, not because she flattered him, but because she understood. Hours passed unnoticed. At one point, as he poured her another glass, his fingers brushed hers. Not accidental, deliberate, brief, charged. She met his gaze, saw the flicker of something unspoken there. A spark. She didn't pull away. The night stretched on, and with it, a decision formed quietly inside her. She would not go back begging. She would not let Daniel or his family write her story. She would arrive at that dinner on her own terms. And when she did, she would not walk in alone. The Van Oren estate loomed like a fortress of glass and marble on the Hudson, every surface gleaming under programmed starlight that never dimmed, not even when real clouds veiled the night. Drones swept the air above, catching perfect angles for the family's curated feeds. Inside, the dining hall stretched cavernous and cold, a monument to wealth and power. The long table glittered with crystal and platinum cutlery, holographic candles flickering in precise rhythm. At its head sat Eleanor Van Oren, the matriarch, her spine straighter than the cane she rested against, her eyes sharp as cut glass. Around her sprawled cousins, uncles, siblings, all draped in the latest couture, their wristbands glowing like jewels with streams of comments and likes as their feeds broadcast the evening live to thousands. Daniel reclined 2 seats down, the golden sun, his smile broad as he sipped a drink that shimmered faintly with nanolight. The conversation circled him like planets around a sun, each cousin eager to laugh at his jokes, each uncle nodding at his careless boasts. And when someone mentioned Isabella, Daniel leaned back with that familiar smirk. "She's still in Brazil," he said, lifting his glass. Poor thing. Probably still trying to figure out the airport kiosks. Not exactly cut out for our world. Laughter rippled down the table. Cousin Lucia fanned herself dramatically. Maybe she found a hammock somewhere in the jungle. Honestly, Daniel, how do you manage? She's sweet, but really, she's no Van Oren. More laughter. Daniel raised his brows in mock sympathy. Don't worry, she'll be begging me to come back any day now. The hall filled with amused chuckles, the sound bouncing off the crystal walls. And then, the doors opened, the room stilled. Isabella stepped through, her heels striking the marble with a rhythm deliberate, steady. She wore midnight silk that caught the light like water, her hair swept back to bare her shoulders. A subtle glimmer traced her wristband, no longer dim but glowing with a faint silver sheen. An upgrade. She looked radiant, poised, untouchable. At her side walked Carlos. His presence filled the space effortlessly, his suit a study in understatement, his expression calm yet commanding. He rested a hand lightly against Isabella's back, guiding but never claiming. The air thickened. Daniel's grin froze. Lucia's fan faltered mid-wave. Even Eleanor's eyes narrowed, the only sign of surprise she allowed herself. Isabella paused at the threshold, letting the silence hang, then offered a smile that was cool, controlled, and devastating. "I hope I'm not late." Polite greetings stumbled from the family as they scrambled to adjust, plastering on smiles that looked more like grimaces. Chairs scraped as they rose to acknowledge her, though none dared look too long at Carlos. Daniel was the first to recover, forcing a laugh. "Darling, you made it. We were just saying—" "Were you?" Isabella's tone was mild, almost curious. "How thoughtful." Carlos leaned in just slightly, his voice low enough for her alone. "You always did know how to make an entrance." Her lips curved, barely visible. Better late than never. They took their seats. Isabella sat opposite Daniel, Carlos beside her. A servant poured wine, and as Carlos passed her glass, his fingers brushed hers deliberately, a whisper of contact that made her pulse quicken. He held her gaze a moment longer than necessary, a conspiratorial smile playing at his lips. Around them, the family scrambled for composure. Conversation resumed, but thinner now, laced with glances toward Isabella and her companion. Lucia spoke first, her tone falsely bright. "So, Isabella? We didn't expect you. What happened? Lost in the jungle?" A ripple of laughter followed, softer this time. Isabella met Lucia's gaze evenly. "No, I found better company." Carlos chuckled softly, and the cousins shifted in their seats. Eleanor cleared her throat, her voice cutting through the tension. "Introduce us, Isabella." "Of course." Isabella's smile was polite, unyielding. "This is Carlos Mendez." An old friend. "We happened to cross paths in São Paulo." Carlos inclined his head. "An honor, Mrs. Van Oren." Eleanor's eyes flicked over him, weighing, measuring. She nodded once. Dinner began. Platters of sculpted cuisine glided down the table on hover trays, steam curling upward in aromatic clouds. Conversations buzzed, each carefully balanced between curiosity and wariness. Daniel tried to dominate again, launching into tales of his latest deals, but the attention kept sliding elsewhere. It slid to Carlos when he spoke casually of his projects, arcologies rising from the Amazon, renewable grids powering cities. He spoke with elegance, precision, but each time he credited Isabella. "Truth is," he said, lifting his glass, "the first time I pitched the idea, no one listened. Except Isabella. She asked questions no one else thought to ask. Her insight forced me to sharpen my vision. Without that, none of it would have happened." Murmurs filled the table. Several cousins shifted uncomfortably, recalling how they'd mocked Isabella for being too quiet, too simple. Daniel forced a laugh, loud and brittle. "Let's not exaggerate. We all know who carries real value here." Carlo set his glass down with deliberate care, his eyes fixing on Daniel. "Yes?" he said softly, "and she's sitting right next to me." Silence struck the table like a blow. Daniel's smile faltered. His hand tightened on his fork, knuckles white. Lucia coughed into her napkin. Someone muttered about the weather. Conversation stumbled forward again, but it was different now, charged. The flirty undercurrent between Isabella and Carlos did not go unnoticed. A brush of fingers as he handed her bread. A low remark that made her smirk. A lingering glance across the rim of a glass. It was subtle, never vulgar, but enough to spark whispers. As the meal progressed, admiration shifted toward Isabella. Cousins leaned closer, asking about her travels, her thoughts on projects. Uncles floated investment ideas, trying to mask their sudden eagerness as casual curiosity. Even Eleanor's sharp gaze softened fractionally as she listened to Isabella describe a proposal for sustainable tech hubs. At one point, Eleanor lifted her glass, commanding silence. "Perhaps," she said slowly, "we have underestimated you, Isabella." The acknowledgement was like thunder in the hall. No one dared contradict it. Daniel's jaw worked, his face flushed. He raised his glass as if to make a joke, but his hand trembled and the wine sloshed over the rim. "Well, isn't this lovely?" he muttered, his voice thick. "My wife's new fan club." No one laughed. Carlos's gaze slid back to Isabella, his voice a low murmur only she could hear. "They're seeing you now." Finally, her lips curved in a faint smile, her pulse steady. She didn't need to gloat. The silence was victory enough. The dinner stretched long into the night, tension simmering beneath every polished word. Isabella sat serene, her every gesture deliberate, her every response measured. She let the family come to her, let their admiration build not because she demanded it, but because she embodied it. And as Daniel squirmed, as the matriarch softened, as Carlos's steady presence lit her from within, Isabella realized the power she had always carried. She had only needed to claim it. The last courses disappeared from the gleaming table, though no one could later recall what they had eaten. The family was too distracted, caught in a current they had not expected, one that seemed to circle around Isabella instead of Daniel. The servers cleared plates with silent precision, their drones gliding overhead to capture the table from flattering angles for the Van Oren feed. But the footage could not hide the truth. The spotlight had moved. Cousins who once ignored Isabella now leaned forward eagerly, dropping names of contacts, dangling invitations. One uncle suggested she might speak at his foundation's gala. Another cousin mentioned a media collaboration. "Only if you're free, of course, Isabella." No pressure. She answered each with calm grace, her tone never sharp, never gloating. A nod here, a smile there, polite deflection where needed. She allowed their interest but didn't feed it, and in that restraint, her power grew. Daniel sat stiff, his face flushed, his smile stretched so thin it looked painful. He laughed too loudly when someone made a joke. He interrupted Carlos twice, only to be brushed aside with a measured, courteous reply that drew more attention back to Isabella. At one point, Lucia leaned toward Isabella, her fan tapping nervously against her wristband. "Darling, I had no idea you were so involved in all this. Truly impressive. Tell me, how do you manage to keep it all so quiet?" Isabella's lips curved. "Perhaps I prefer action to performance." The jab landed clean. A few cousins stifled chuckles. Lucia sat back, her fan fluttering faster. Eleanor, the matriarch, had remained silent for much of the evening, but her gaze never left Isabella. Finally, she lifted her glass, her hand steady despite her years. The hall hushed at once. "To Isabella," she said, her voice low but resonant, "for surprising us. For reminding us that strength takes many forms." The toast rang through the hall, more powerful for its simplicity. One by one, glasses lifted. The crystal clinked like small bells. Isabella inclined her head, raising her own glass with quiet composure. Daniel did not raise his. The silence around him grew louder with every heartbeat until finally he slammed his glass down. The stem cracked under the force, red wine spilling across the tablecloth like blood. He shoved back his chair, his voice shaking. "This is absurd. All of you fawning over her like she's one of us. She's not." The words froze the room. Eleanor's eyes narrowed. "Sit down, Daniel." But he pressed on, his voice rising. "She's a nobody. She was supposed to be decoration. I brought her into this family, me, and now you act like she's the prize. What has she ever done, other than latch onto me?" The silence was so complete that Isabella could hear her own breath. She could feel every pair of eyes on her, waiting, judging, deciding what to believe. Her pulse raced, but she kept her voice steady. "What I've done, Daniel, is survive. Even when you tried to make me small, even when you left me stranded, hoping I'd crawl back, I survived. And I learned." Carlos's voice followed, calm, controlled, cutting. "And in doing so, she's earned more respect tonight than you ever have, Daniel." Daniel turned on him, face twisted. "You think you can just stroll in here, flaunting your money, your projects, and take my—" "Enough." Eleanor's voice cracked like thunder. The old woman's cane struck the floor, sharp as a gunshot. "Daniel, you shame yourself. Sit down." He looked around wildly, but no one moved to defend him. No cousin, no uncle, not even Lucia. He saw only disappointment, annoyance, thinly veiled disgust. His mouth worked soundlessly before he turned and stormed from the hall, the doors slamming behind him. No one followed. The silence he left was heavy, but it was not uncomfortable. It was cleansing. The weight of his arrogance lifted with his absence. Eleanor raised her glass again, calm restored. "To Isabella," she repeated. This time the toast was unanimous. Isabella didn't smile broadly. She didn't gloat. She simply raised her glass with quiet dignity, her gaze steady. This was her victory, not in words but in silence, in grace. The dinner wound down, family members dispersing into smaller groups, some eager to curry favor, others lingering near Carlos as if proximity might confer status. Isabella excused herself, stepping out onto the terrace for air. The night was cool, a rare breeze carrying the scent of salt and city smoke. Below, the river gleamed under programmed starlight, the estate's glass walls reflecting endless versions of her silhouette. She rested her hands on the railing, inhaling deeply, letting the noise of the hall fade behind her. Footsteps approached, unhurried, certain. Carlos joined her, leaning casually against the railing, his sleeve brushing hers. For a long moment, neither spoke, content to watch the river. Finally, he said softly, "You didn't need me tonight. You carried yourself without me." She turned her head slightly, studying his profile. "Maybe. But I was glad you were there." He smiled faintly, his eyes on the water. "I was glad too." He reached for her hand, lifting it slowly, deliberately. His lips brushed against her skin, lingering just long enough to send warmth flooding her chest. He didn't release her right away, and she didn't pull back. "You've always had this strength," he murmured. "Daniel just never saw it, or never wanted to, but tonight, everyone did." Her voice came low, steady. "What do you see, Carlos?" His gaze met hers, dark and steady. "A woman who doesn't need saving. A woman who knows her worth, and a woman I'd be a fool not to respect." The words hung between them, heavy and light all at once. Isabella felt her breath catch, not with uncertainty, but with recognition. He wasn't offering her rescue, he was offering equality. She let the silence stretch, charged but comfortable, then drew her hand back gently, her lips curving in a faint smile. "Come," she said softly, "let's leave them to their games." He chuckled, falling into step beside her as they walked back inside. Side by side, their movements in unison, neither leading nor following. The family looked up as they entered, conversations pausing, eyes tracking the two of them together. There was admiration in some gazes, envy in others, calculation in more. But it didn't matter. Isabella no longer measured herself against their judgment. She had turned the tables without raising her voice, without striking back. Her revenge was silent, her victory rooted in authenticity and grace. And as she glanced at Carlos, saw the spark in his smile mirrored in her own reflection on the glass walls, she realized she was free. Daniel's approval, the family's scorn, the hierarchy they had built, it no longer bound her. She had rewritten her place not with shouting or force, but by being undeniably, unshakably herself. The night stretched ahead, alive with possibility. And for the first time in years, Isabella felt not like a guest at the Van Orens table, but the master of her own story.